Hello my friends, I'm Rich Larson and I'm the IRC Tire Guy. Today we'll be talking hard enduro gearing. We've got all different combinations of dirt trick sprockets here, and now we just need to understand the characteristics of each differing combination. This is a subject that I probably get more questions on than any other. When riders see me climb a hill, hit an obstacle, or even do a wheelie, usually you can find the question, what gear are you in, somewhere in the comments. This is a really tough question for me to answer. Of course, the answer is simple. I know what gear I'm in, but really the tough thing for me is more what the person asking that question is going to do with my answer. The truth is, there's so many things wrong with that question. The first and most obvious is we probably don't have the same bike. It's amazing how many times I've been asked that question from a guy that's riding a 97 CR250. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that bike, but I'm not sure if knowing what gear I'm in on my beta is really going to help you. Truthfully, whether it's a CR250 or even a KTM 300, if we aren't on the exact same bike, the question is problematic. Really, even if we have the same bike, the next question that's almost more important is what gearing are you running? One tooth can completely change the way the bike needs to be ridden. Really, that brings us to another reason why this is a tough question for me to want to answer. We probably have different styles and preferences when it comes to riding. The reason for this rant is I don't want to steer anyone wrong with my simple answer of I'm in first gear or I'm in second. So my hope is today I can shine a little light on the experiences that I've had with different gearing setups on each differing bike. Now, oftentimes, on most bikes I'm riding, I leave them in the stock gearing for a long period of time. There's a few reasons for this. I'd say the majority of the time, the stock gearing is really solid for everything. You can ride the bike slow when you need to go slow and fast when you need to go fast. Most of the time, the stock gearing is really well-rounded. There's a reason the factories send the bikes the way they do. They've probably done more testing than you have, and they're trying to cater to the widest possible audience. As your riding gets more specific, so will your gearing. So let's talk what the stock gearing feels like on most bikes and break down the pros and cons. Now, when I say how the stock gearing feels on most bikes, I mean in my experience, most enduro bikes come from the factory with similar feel when it comes to gearing. A great example is the Gas EC300 stock gearing, 1350. This gearing is great for a well-rounded performance. As I've mentioned before, I like a long first gear for most of my riding. When I'm doing one-off obstacles or my style of play riding, a long first gear allows the machine to lug and track at slow speeds, but also has the snap off the bottom that I need. Although in more technical terrain, as your speeds begin to increase, you'll find the bike is at the top of its RPM range in first gear. This is best demonstrated when I'm racing hard enduro. Because the average speeds are slightly higher, my RPMs are at the top of the range in first gear in the faster technical sections. If we shift to second, we may have the ability to go faster, but when mistakes are made, we slow down. With the stock 1350 gearing, the bike doesn't quite have the power to pull you back up to the desired speed and momentum in second gear. This causes the need for a downshift to first, gain in momentum, then an upshift back to second to keep the RPMs in that desired range. A good way to explain this is the bike feeling like it needs to be ridden in between first and second gear. The last thing we want is to be fighting upshifts and downshifts. Our goal is to shift less. Simply put, less shifting equals less work and an increased ability to focus on the race. So let's talk how we change that. Now, there are a few different options on gearing setup. My goal in these higher speed technical situations is keeping the bike in second gear all the time. We want a much shorter first gear and a much longer second gear. The way we do this is adding teeth to the rear sprocket or reducing a tooth on the front sprocket. Reducing one tooth on the front sprocket equals a 3.5 tooth increase on the rear sprocket. So large changes in gearing can be made by adjusting just one tooth on the front. With the Gas, KTM, and Husky, I found my preference in gearing for racing is a 1248 to a 1249 setup front and rear. This allows for a much longer second gear that I keep the bike in almost 100% of the time. With this gearing, you also gain the benefit of using a smaller rear sprocket, which doesn't get hung up as much on the rocks in hard enduro situations. Now, a great example of the difference between brands is the Beta's stock gearing of 1448. This gearing on an Austrian branded 300 would allow for an insanely high speed and an underpowered first gear. But on the Beta, the stock 1448 gearing feels similar to the stock gas gearing of 1350. These are two different transmissions. Now on the Beta, I found in my testing 1349 to 1350 allows for that longer second gear we're looking for when racing hard enduro. Finally, I also need to mention a few last points. A more experienced rider is able to hold a higher level of momentum than the average rider. Preference and experience comes into play when we talk gearing. For example, changing the Beta's gearing from the stock 1448 to 1348 requires a more focused input of clutch and throttle together when in second gear. Although the overall momentum you can hold is much faster, equaling a more competitive speed and hopefully more competitive finishes when approaching one-off obstacles like single ledges with no run-up or single boulders, I'd prefer tackling those obstacles using the stock gearing in first gear. In second gear, a heavier focus on throttle and a quicker release of the clutch is required to find that same snap and propulsion needed to get over those obstacles. The point is, there's always a give and take. Most of the top hard enduro athletes change their gearing depending on the specific race, location, overall speed, and of course, weather condition. When the conditions are slick, you don't necessarily want more snap. You want the longest power curve possible to assist in holding traction. Testing different gearing setups is the best way to find the right power for your style and preference. I hope this long-winded video shines a little light on the subtleties of gearing. It's really not a one-gear-fits-all situation, just like everything in life. Thanks for the support of the channel this year, and if you're enjoying the channel, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as well as follow us on Instagram at IRC Moto and my personal Instagram page at RichLarson511. And until next time, keep shredding.